All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mahan Mirza, the Executive Director of the Ansari Institute for Global Engagement with Religion, part of Notre Dame's Keough School of Global Affairs. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the first of two lectures we're hosting in memory of Father Drew Christiansen this fall. Father Drew Christiansen passed away last year. At the time, he was Distinguished Professor of Ethics and Human Development in Georgetown University School of Foreign Service and Senior Fellow at Georgetown's Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs. Father Drew previously served as the head of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and was one of the first faculty members at our Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies. Churches for Middle East Peace, an NGO with advisory status at the United Nations, has established a lecture series in honor of Father Drew. The very first Christiansen lecture was delivered last year at Georgetown by Sami El-Yusuf, CEO of the Latin Patriarchate in Jerusalem, the first lay CEO to occupy that position, managing the entire administration of the Diocese of the Holy Land. The second Christiansen lecturer, Dr. Bernard Sabella, who is a Palestinian member of parliament, will be speaking here this November 16th. So please mark your calendars. We don't have the exact time yet. We're working out the travel, but we do know it will be on November 16th. We are honored to have with us today Sir Jeffrey M. Aboud, who chairs the Catholic Advisory Council of Churches for Middle East Peace that established this lecture series. Sir Jeff has been knighted by the Vatican into the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem. Sir Jeff also serves on the board of the Caritas Baby Hospital Foundation, the U.S. fundraising arm of the Caritas Baby Hospital in Bethlehem. He also coordinates a support program for Holy Family School and summer camp in Gaza. His book, A Great Cloud of Witness, The Catholic Church's Experience in the Holy Land, collects 70 years of the Catholic Church's statements on the situation in the Holy Land. Sir Jeff has edited with the Justice and Peace Commission of the Assembly of Catholic Ordinaries of the Holy Land, their book. It's titled, Is Peace Possible? I was talking to him earlier and he said it is. So he edited this for that book for its North American release. He's also just finished co-editing a new book collecting Father Drew's writings on the Holy Land, to be released by Georgetown University Press in 2024. I'm grateful to the many co-sponsors for today's program, including the Kroc Institute for International Peace Studies, Liu Institute for Asia and Asian Studies, Catholic Peacebuilding Network, and Bethlehem University Foundation and Churches for Middle East Peace. I'd also like to thank Dr. Charles Powell and Rebecca Go for their work behind the scenes with the Ansari Institute to bring this program to us today. So Jeff will speak for about, he said, 38 minutes, after which we will have some time for questions and discussion. We're deeply honored to host the Father Drew Christiansen Memorial Lecture later this year, and we're delighted that to have Sir Jeff with us to say more about your work with Churches for Middle East Peace today. Please join me in welcoming Sir Jeffrey Aboud.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I just want to thank Mahan and Rebecca, Dr. Powell, and the organization sponsoring this talk. It's, of course, named in honor of Father Drew, and Mahan ran through a little bit of his bio. I could easily speak the next half hour on Father Drew. He was awesome. But being Father Drew and being a Jesuit, he would say, stop talking about me in his own humble way and say, do something that will help people. So that's what we're going to do today. So Father Drew and I served on the board together of Churches for Middle East Peace. Mahan said it's an NGO in Washington, D.C., with consultative status for the UN. And what we do is we work to educate, elevate, and advocate for peace building, development, and economic opportunities. And we advocate for human rights in the context of the Middle East, especially the Holy Land. Now, when we talk about the Holy Land, most people think Palestine and Israel. It also includes Jordan as well as Cyprus. But for the purposes of today, we're going to speak about Palestine and Israel. That's what most people think about. So on the map, you can see Israel in the center with the West Bank and the Gaza Strip making up Palestinian areas today. Now, it's especially important to Christians, not just because it's the cradle of our faith, but the Christians there have been there for over 2,000 years. In fact, if you go back to Acts 2:11, Arab Christians were listed as one of the ethnic groups present at the first Pentecost. Now, today's Palestinian Christians are their descendants, and they've kept not only an unbroken living witness, but they've kept the sacramental life of the church there, and they keep the Christian presence in the Holy Land. So that continuity, I thought I wanted to share this. I thought this was a good picture of continuity. At the time was my 1-year-old grandson and my 100-year-old great aunt. And I thought, there's almost 100 years there, and it just shows the beauty of continuity. And whether it's in our families or in the Holy Land, it's a cool thing. So, and there, as I said, it goes all the way back. It is the mother church. Many people think it might be the Vatican, but of course it came from the Church of Jerusalem. And there the Catholics are called the Latins because they spoke Latin back in the day. And the Latin Patriarch is the head of it. It's our Patriarch Pizzaballa there. He's the Patriarch of Jerusalem, and he answers to the Patriarch of Rome, Pope Francis. Now, ethnically, the permanent Christian communities there are almost all Palestinian. They live in Israel, they live in the West Bank, they live in Gaza, and many of the old cities we associate with the birthplace of Christianity, like Jericho or the Old City in Jerusalem or Bethlehem, are in today's Palestinian areas. And this is pictures of some of them I've taken over the years. I have stories with so much of this stuff. I can't share a lot of it during the talk, but maybe in the Q&A. But they're called the living stones because they're the stones that make up the church, and they keep the faith alive. And these are some of the other people, and they're great people, and they're strong people, and they need to be strong people because the Christian community there today faces a lot of challenges. And in fact, they live very much the way of the cross. So that unfortunately hasn't changed a whole lot in the Holy Land, but we're going to look at a little bit of why that is today. So as we do this, our perspective is we're looking at what is the church saying. This is an issue that can get very conflicting and very political really fast. So we focus on what is the church saying, what's the hierarchy saying, what have they put out? Because that's what we think, well, as Christians, we think is important. So why the way of the cross? Well, Pope Benedict, when talking about this issue, said we recite the seemingly endless list of difficulties separating Israelis and Palestinians, and it makes it more urgent to address the problem of the fundamental injustice at the heart of this question. We all know that peace requires justice. So no peace, where's the injustice? To just make a litany of symptoms to blame each other, they did it, well, they did it first, well, they did it, doesn't really get to the root cause and isn't really helpful. So what's the root cause? Well, this is a statement put out by all the heads of all the churches in Jerusalem. And in it, they say that occupation remains the root cause of the conflict and of the continued suffering in the Holy Land. And it's not always easy to get the heads of churches over there to agree on much, but this is something that they agreed on. So we're going to look a little bit at why are they saying that. Now, just by definition, occupation is maintaining control over a place by military force. This is, again, nothing new to the Holy Land. It was the Romans in Jesus' time. It was the Turks and the British, and today in areas it's the Israelis. Now, anytime I want to mention Israelis, I want to clarify this at the beginning. This is the Commission for Religious Relations with the Jews the Vatican puts out. And they say there's a clear distinction between the state of Israel and the Jewish people. That the existence of the state of Israel should not be envisioned in a perspective which is itself religious, but in reference to the common principles of international law. Being a political entity like any state, we have to be careful because we, of course, have our interreligious ties with Jews and Judaism on one hand, and then we have political ties with the state of Israel and its government's policies on the other hand. We don't want to confuse the two because we don't want to get to anti-Semitism, and that's something that's very real, and we just should work against it, honestly. So we're differentiating, to be clear. Now, to get back to what the heads of the churches said, the occupation remains the root cause of the conflict. The Latin Patriarchate put a video on YouTube calling it a sin. That's how bad it is. And it's been the primary reason that the Christian population there has gone from about 18% to less than 2% today. It's actually more about 1.5% right now. So the work we do is not only important, but there's a certain amount of urgency to it also. Now, to define kind of what this looks like, the Middle East Synod of Bishops met in 2010, and in their official closing statement, they said that we've taken account of the impact of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict on the whole region, especially on the Palestinians who are suffering the consequences of the occupation, the lack of freedom of movement, the wall of separation, the checkpoints, the demolition of homes, and the disturbance of socioeconomic life. And since this is what the bishop spoke about, we're going to give you a little bit of picture, hopefully imparting, as Pope Francis says, a little bit of smell of the sheep, a little bit of what the flock is experiencing today. So the bishop spoke about freedom of movement. This is just a Christmas card on Bethlehem at Christmas time. It's when they could freely travel to and from Bethlehem, but we're living in a time, it's the first time in history that Bethlehem and Jerusalem have been separated. And one of the things they're separated by is this wall. You've heard probably of the separation barrier, the separation wall, the annexation wall. They call it all kinds of things, but this is just what it looks like. This is inside Bethlehem. It's about a mile maybe from the Church of the Nativity. These are some other pictures of the inside of it that I've taken over the years. So they're pretty much enclosed in this city. If you can see the wall, if you're coming from Jerusalem into Bethlehem, this is the main road. So if you're on a tour bus or whatever, you'll see the wall kind of goes there, goes right along the line of the city here, goes up, and just by that tree line up there and on around. So that's what it looks like on the ground. This is what it looks like from space. This is a Google image. You can see the top. You can see this white line, which is the wall, which goes here, goes all the way around this city of Kikilya. It's about 50,000 people, goes down around and on to the next city, and so on and so on. Bethlehem's one of these. And I'll show you the only way for the people living in Kikilya to get out of the city is this tunnel. They have to go through this tunnel, which is controlled by the military, which is part of the freedom of movement restrictions that the bishops speak about. Now, inside that city, this is what the wall looks like. This is what you'll see if you live there, if you're a Christian living there or Muslim living there. I'm going to show you the next slide, and it's what you'll see from the Israeli side. So when you go by, maybe in a tour bus or whatever, this is what you'll see. So it looks a little different. You can get a little bit of the idea of the scale of it. At the bottom here, you can see the guardrail, and there's an access road, and then there's the top of the wall with just the tops of the trees visible over it. And your tour guide may even point out, oh, this is the separation barrier you've heard about. And you would rightly look at it and think, oh, well, that doesn't look so bad. It looks like my backyard. But obviously, from the other side, you get a different perspective. And that's one of the reasons, like we, as well as the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, recommends you do go on pilgrimage, if you can go with a group that meets with the Palestinian Christians living there, because you'll get a little bit different picture. Now, as you saw from the satellite image, it's built around those areas. Generally, what it does is it takes all the food and resources and agricultural, puts them on one side of the wall. It becomes difficult to get to. And these are just some pictures in areas that kind of illustrate that. This is the wall around Gaza. Up top is Holy Family Church in Gaza that we support. Those are guard towers around the wall. The next picture I'm going to show you is just in general, just an Israeli prison. So that's what that looks like. Now, Cardinal Foley, who was head of our order until he passed, he said, he also addressed this saying, living conditions are far worse in the Palestinian territories. Again, Christians being almost all Palestinian. It makes it difficult for the population to reach their jobs, schools, hospitals. So life is hard, especially for them. And it does make it hard. If you want to get in and out of these areas that are contained, this is Bethlehem. This is a Christian home on the left. On the right's Our Lady of Sorrows Elderly Center that we support. These people are cut off oftentimes from their families or medical care or people coming in to visit them because they don't have access. This sometimes makes it hard to get to church. Many of the people in Bethlehem have never even been to Jerusalem because they're not allowed out of the city. Many have not been to the Mediterranean, which is just a few miles away. This is Caritas Baby Hospital in Bethlehem. As Mahan mentioned, I'm on the board of their foundation. This is in the parking lot. You can literally take this picture and turn around and take this picture. And that's the wall there. It makes it difficult for staff to get to and from work because they have to negotiate these walls because they're not just walls you walk around. We'll look at a little bit at that here in a minute. But Pope Benedict spoke in front of it when he was there. Pope Francis made it a point to stop and pray at it when he was there. When I was there, this is in Bethlehem, the guards opened up the wall and told me to get away from the wall. So this is welcome to Bethlehem. But I threw this picture in because I always have hope, and we'll get to that at the end. These are kids jumping the fence to get into heaven. So now to get in and out of these restrictions of freedom of movement, again, that the bishop spoke about, this is the main checkpoint leaving Bethlehem. So when I took this picture, the soldier in the booth wanted to talk to their friends, so they just shut it down for like 15 minutes. And these people were just getting more and more frustrated because they're trying to get to work. They're trying to get to the hospital. They're trying to get to their medical appointments or schools or whatever. And they just weren't opening it. And you can imagine, I think here, if you're with the toll booth and the toll workers just decided to shut the gates and talk on their cell phone for 50 minutes, you get kind of ticked off. But this is life. I think the UN just issued, there are over 635 of these barriers to movement in an area about the size of northern Indiana, maybe. The checkpoints like this, kids go to school through them. People sometimes have to navigate their construction materials or their livestock in and out. This is a neighborhood in Hebron. They've just walled off the whole neighborhood. You can see the soldiers on the other side. So people get in and out when the soldiers let them in and out. Another picture, same thing. This is a checkpoint in Hebron. A few hundred kids a day have to go through this to get to school. This is the other side of it. They're met with, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in the booth 7, soldiers that are generally not the most friendly. By the time these kids, I've spoken to the teachers at these schools, and they say, by the time the kids get here, they're so stressed out, it takes an hour just to get them to calm down enough to be able to learn. And some don't even come to school. They're like, we can't deal with this today, so they don't go. One of the bright points of this, just like the kids hopping the fence into heaven, is Maxim Watch. It's a group of Jewish Israelis, mostly older women, that will go to these checkpoints and help the people navigate them. They carry more weight with the Israeli soldiers, so they'll navigate, let these people through. They have to get here, they have to get there, and they have a lot more success than just the people do. So what all these freedom of movements and barriers have done that the bishop spoke about is it's taken from the map on the left there, the green areas, there was maybe 1.5 million people, whereas today, in the last map in the green areas, there's about 5 million people. So it's basically contracted, all the territory's gone, and these people are confined into these areas. That's a closer image of the West Bank, but you can see, like, if you're in Jericho here and you want to get to Bethlehem or Jerusalem down here, you're not allowed to travel that. So it's broken it up into these, well, basically reservations. So the other thing the bishop spoke about was the disturbance of socioeconomic life. Those are just the things that we take for granted and kind of experience each day. One of the things in roads in the West Bank areas, there's roads that the Palestinians don't have access to. The road on the left goes through, I think that's Bet Jala. It's walled off so that the city it goes through, nobody can use it. And as a consequence, what happens on busy days is, since the Palestinians aren't able to use the road, they have to get through the checkpoints. So you can see, get an idea what that looks like. Sometimes the roads are down the middle of the street. You have to walk on this side. And they'll say they're for security, but you can see that doesn't provide really any security. Kids can't use this is in Hebron, they can't use the roads on the left there on the top one, or the roads on the right, so they have to go the back pass to get to school. One of the things we take for granted for socioeconomic life is water. These are different military orders that govern the use of water. They're summed up in the top one, essentially. All water resources in the occupied territories are Israeli state property. So at one point, we were trying to dig wells in Gaza, and we weren't able to because the Israeli government wouldn't give us permission. So we didn't. With the control of water, you can see the distribution of it. The red line is the World Health Organization's minimum standard to maintain a healthy population. So you can see what that looks like. What it looks like in real life is this. You'll see this is a settlement that you've heard of, a city really, but see how green it is, and then the Palestinian city just behind it, how brown it is because of the water access. Many of the towns, this is Bethlehem, people there since they're not allowed to tie into the water supply, they have to provide their own. So they do it with tanks that they collect, cisterns. It's like an Old Testament thing, but you have to use them. Cisterns, you can tell when they're close to each other, like the settlements and the Palestinian towns. One way to tell the difference is the Palestinian towns will have water tanks on the roof, like on the left, and then the settlements, like one on the right, they don't need the water tanks because they have access. So those are some of the things of what the Livingstones, the people there, deal with. There's becoming increasingly, unfortunately, more challenges to the institutional church. And this has been accelerated in the last year or two. But these are some of the things that the church itself is having to deal with. So in 2018, you may or may not remember, they closed the Holy Sepulchre for 3 days because there was an attempt by the Jerusalem municipality to begin not just taxing the church and its properties, but to back tax them to 1967. So it would have essentially bankrupted everything. The heads of the churches decided we have to stop this. So they closed the Holy Sepulchre. And in the news, you may have just heard, I saw a few things, interviews with tourists. It's like, Oh, you can't go to the thing. Oh, yeah, we're disappointed. We wanted to come. And I get that, but there was a little more to it than you'd get on the news sometimes. So this is what the heads of churches said. They said, we, the heads of churches in charge of the Holy Sepulchre and the status quo that govern the various Christian sites in Jerusalem, are following with great concern the systematic campaign against the churches and the Christian community in the Holy Land. Recently, this has reached an unprecedented level as the Jerusalem municipality issued punitive taxes, ordered seizures of church assets, properties, and bank accounts for alleged debts of punitive taxes. These actions breach existing agreements and international obligations, which guarantee the rights and privileges of the church, in what seems like an attempt to weaken the Christian presence in Jerusalem. The greatest victims in this would be those impoverished families who will go without food and housing, as well as the children who won't be able to attend school. The systematic campaign against churches and Christians reaches its now discriminatory and racist bill that targets only the Christian properties. They're seeing it more and more. The Petra Hotel in East Jerusalem was illegally obtained. The Mount of Olives, there's currently a push by the Israeli Parks Authority to nationalize the Mount of Olives and make it a national park. There's 20-some Christian and religious sites on the Mount of Olives. It'll essentially all be taken away. The church will no longer have control over its own property. So there'll actually be probably a statement coming out in the next week or two about that. Like Maxim watched the Jewish ladies helping, like the kids hopping the fence. This is a sister. The Israeli soldiers came on her property and she told them, get out. I don't want you here. I love nuns. Safety. More and more, and again, this is not even most Israelis. This is kind of the extreme end of it. We're seeing more and more arson and vandalism and things against church properties. That's the Latrun Monastery in Israel. That's the Church of Loaves and Fishes a few years ago. Some other ones, graffiti on Christian things, desecration of cemeteries. The Church of All Nations there at Gethsemane, someone came in to try and set it on fire last year or the year before, I don't remember. This was this year in May. It came in and broke the statue. And these things happen, unfortunately, enough that they have a name. They're called price tag attacks. And the Assembly of Catholic Ordinaries in the Holy Land came out with a statement saying, to address this, it is with regret and anger we see ourselves condemning such criminal acts, which have been repeated many times, while we see no attempt to stop this dangerous phenomenon by the state authorities, especially while top officials claim as if Christians are doing very well here, doing very well in it. It's a challenge. Freedom of religion is another big challenge for the church. This was the Holy Sepulchre. That's the stone of anointing. That's where Jesus' body was anointed. That was a few years ago when they decided to close the Holy Sepulchre down. Again, they always give safety is the thing, but the heads of churches have come out and said this has nothing to do with safety. It's just harassment. In fact, the ceremony of the Holy Fire, every Holy Saturday, the fire comes out from the Holy Sepulchre and it's distributed. And the Israeli authorities have cut the attendance allowed by 90%. So the patriarchates are really upset because so many people come to participate, and they have for hundreds of years. So this is just becoming a new thing. And sometimes they even use violence to keep these priests out. 2 Coptic priests there. Recently, just in the last month or so, convent and a monastery in Israel, some of the more extreme Jewish settlers have been trying to break in during service. And that's it. And one thing with the tax issue, when the heads of churches came out and talked about it and closed the Holy Sepulchre, the government backed off. They just put it on the back burner. And then in May of this year, they tried to kind of reconstitute it and bring it out again. It was going to start taxing NGOs at a 65% tax rate. Now, not even Amazon can survive a 65% tax rate. But again, the international outcry was enough that it came back off the table for now, but it'll probably reappear. The dignity of belonging and the right to citizenship. Israel had passed a nation-state law, just giving self-determination in the state being unique to the Jewish people. So as Patriarch Sabah said at the time, we're not Jewish, where does that leave us? And the Patriarchate put out this statement saying this recently enacted law, which is still the law today, is a cause of great concern. While defining Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, the law fails to provide any constitutional guarantees for the rights of the indigenous and other minorities. Where there's discrimination, there's no dignity. The law says there are not equal rights between Jews and Arabs and refuses to acknowledge their existence. The Christian citizens of Israel have the same concerns as any other non-Jewish communities in respect to this. So finally, actually Father Drew was one of the people that kind of got the Holy Land Coordination going. He was, they go every year, every January, and report back to the Vatican from the Holy Land what's going on and all that. This kind of sums up basically everything we talked about and refers back to what the bishops said right at the beginning. There's a fundamental injustice. The root of the cause of the conflict is the occupation. They say for 50 years, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza have languished under occupation, violating the human dignity of both Palestinians and Israelis. Our coordination has called for justice and peace every year since 1998, yet the suffering continues. So this call must get louder. As bishops, we implore Christians in our home countries to recognize our own responsibility for prayer, awareness, and action. So many people in the Holy Land have spent their entire lives under occupation, yet still profess hope and strive for reconciliation. Now more than ever, they deserve our solidarity, and they do. So how do we do that? How can we help people restore their dignity of a normal socioeconomic life, their dignity of movement, their dignity of belonging, their dignity to right to education? Well, Father Twal, the Patriarchate, said, yes, there can be hopelessness, but that's the life, and we have to build from it. And as Christians, we live in a land that's experienced resurrection, so we always have hope, and we do. And I'm going to share that with you. Some of the hope is the clergy and the religious that are there every day. They were there yesterday, they're there today, they'll be there tomorrow. They're being the hands and feet of Jesus to the people. And they have a lot of respect because they stay with the people, engage with people. These are some of the sisters in Gaza. Despite being bombed every few years, they're always told to get out. They don't, they stay. They have a lot of respect in the community because of that. And it's there in the Palestinian Christians themselves, passing their faith on to the next generation. They know it's going to be a tough life. They know they're a minority. They know a lot of them have been leaving, but they're passing it on because they're going to need that. And just one quick story, what you'll see there is in some of these reservations, people don't have enough bread. So sometimes people that have extra will stick it in a bag in the street, and then people that need it can come get it. And I think that's kind of the heart of the church, really. On the website, I think of the Keough Institute, I like this quote. It said, they work tirelessly to provide everyone with the means to achieve a material and spiritual life that matches the dignity they already possess. And this is what we're about. This is what we want to do, and hopefully you'll be able to engage with opportunities to do that. So what we do is, and this is the end here, we support the backbone of the church, and we do it in 4 ways. This is also the recommendation of the UN Conference of Catholic Bishops. The first is prayer. Prayer is, of course, going to provide the moral direction and the moral impetus to do anything, to help participate, to make people's lives better. And that's the seed from which all this other is birthed. Projects, even though the Christian communities there are less than 2%, in the Palestinian NGOs, we provide over 45% of their health, human services, social services, and education services. And projects, we can engage. This is a school. I know they engage with the Tantour Institute. If there are research projects or teaching projects or Friend of mine, Nancy, and actually graduate of this fine esteemed university, David, they started a program a few years ago called HOPE. They exchange teachers and students between the Latin Patriarchate, the Catholic schools there, and schools here. And one of the things they do is help provide these teachers with the tools they need to deal with kids that are sometimes so stressed out, they're eating their own hair. So things like that. Do you have math skills or IT skills or writing skills or English skills? They can use all of it. It's a poor church, and we can help direct you to the right person to be able to engage with those skills. We'd love to see more and more people get involved. And there's plenty of opportunity there. And the last thing is persuasion, and this is what CMAP does, Churches for Middle East Peace. We advocate for peace and justice issues. It's not a political thing. We're not like vote Democrat, vote Republican. That has nothing to do with it. The two biggest things we're working on now is trying to get the U.S. Congress to release $75 million in food aid for the Palestinians. It was approved, just a few politicians are holding it up. But it's like, get people food, you know? And the other thing is we're trying to make sure U.S. aid money doesn't go for the imprisonment of children. I mean, these should not be controversial issues. They're moral issues, and those are the kind of issues we use persuasion, we used to work on. So there's a QR code over there if you're interested. Ultimately and finally, the picture on the left was taken in the early 40s. I think that's the possibility, again, for the future. It's certainly what we'd like to see, and we can all join together to do that. So we hope you will. Thank you.
We have time for questions.
Sir Aboud, thank you. We've already met, of course. I'm Charles with the Ansari Institute. Two, perhaps three questions. I'm looking at this book, I believe, that you edited. Is peace possible? And I wonder, is peace possible, and how might that look, in your opinion? And the other one, we see all of the walls surrounding the Palestinian Authority. And when I was in Israel recently, the Israeli interaction that I had Palestinian interaction as well, but the Israelis said that those fences are there because they want to keep terrorism out of Israel. If you could just maybe speak to some of that.
Sure, yeah. The first question, how peace is possible? So any peace initiative, has to be based on a moral framework. If it's not, it's going to be based on a political framework. And if it's based on a political framework, basically whatever side has the most political power is going to get what they want. But if you base it on a moral framework, there's three things. It treats everybody as equals. So there's three steps. There's acknowledging that both sides have legitimate claims and legitimate rights. It's also that there's going to be a limit to those rights for both sides, because nobody gets whatever they want. You've got to balance it with the other person. And those limits have to be based on does it allow the other side to fulfill what their rights to. So it has to be based on a moral framework. The second question with the walls, this is how it's developed over the years. And that was the initial impetus for building it, because suicide bombing was a big thing in the early 2000s. And it pretty much stopped by 2003, 2004. Today, the walls are about 65% of the way built. And you have to look at the thing, well, if it was built for that reason, then why 20 years later are we still building these walls? And it seems, from the pictures I showed and from being there, that they're losing all their resources. So it seems to be more, at this point, a resource accumulation than any terrorism, because the walls, but also at the time they started building the wall, there was a big crackdown by the Palestinian Authority. Hey, this isn't helping us either. We need to get on these guys, as well as the Israeli security increased also. So that's my take on that, for what it's worth. Does that answer what you're thinking? Okay, thanks. Anybody else?
Other questions?
Everybody's hot and full of pizza.
Well, I have the mic, so I can
Oh,
ask a question as folks are thinking. I mean, what you say and what you present is undeniable, like the reality. And I think it takes just a little bit of time for it to soak in, even if you're familiar with it, when you see the pictures and the personal experiences. You know, my question has to do with more the international community.
mm-hmm.
So I go to conferences on religious freedom and so on.
Yeah.
The Christians, the plight of Christians in the Holy Land is never mentioned.
Yeah.
The conversation here in the United States is one of, bipartisan, yielding, unquestionable support for the state of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
How the political issue is framed.
Yeah.
And if you try to raise some of these questions, you addressed it in the beginning, but I'm going to just push it a little bit.
Sure.
Immediately we get, anti-Semitism as the charge.
Yeah.
And so how do we change the conversation here with the billions of dollars that go in aid without questioning some of these, the realities on the ground? How does that conversation change while remaining sensitive to the concerns of anti-Semitism and being mindful of violent resistance, which is a human response? Give me liberty or give me death.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, a very destructive response that's, to say the least, unhelpful.
Yeah. I think a starting point would be, are there anybody from the Irish Institute here? Okay. So one of the great examples of how that can work is the Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland. George Mitchell at the time came in, Clinton had sent him in to make peace in Northern Ireland, right? Protestants and Catholics, all that stuff. Which again, that wasn't a religious conflict any more than this is a religious conflict. But he did two things. He brought everybody to the table. He brought the IRA on this end. He brought the Ulster Defense Forces and stuff on this end. Everybody got a seat at the table, because ultimately that's who you have to work out your peace with, right? So you need to bring the Jewish settlers. You need to bring Hamas. You need to bring everybody in between to the table, because that's when I think violence breaks out in either of those situations, is when people have no hope, when they don't see the political process helping their lives, because it's certainly not helping their lives at this point. And the other thing he did was he had everybody not disarm at the time. That was something they worked towards, but they had a ceasefire. So, and it largely held. There'd be a few periodic breakouts now and then, but one thing that process allowed for was okay, if there's a breakout of violence on the British side, the British will handle it, or the Irish will handle it. You have to acknowledge that each side will handle its own security and not just overstep. In Ireland's case, it would be the British. Well, they did this, so we're going to send in the troops and, take them out. So there have to be those two things just in place to begin. And then I think we can begin to build on that. And hopefully, the way I see the process is you have to acknowledge the dignity of the other people. When you get to that point, you can begin to see them as equals, and you get to equality. And then when you get to equality, you'll want to see people treated the same, so you can bring in justice. And then when you bring in justice, you can put the structures in place to maintain that justice and create peace. And then maybe you get to the point of reconciliation. And that's something South Africa's working on right now. And it's a long process, but I think it's obviously bearing fruit. So I think it'll bear more fruit. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
How much authority? Thank you. How much authority does the Palestinian Authority really have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they have that much autonomous authority. The reason you can tell any area who's in control, and this is worldwide, and it's a super easy way, but you don't usually think about it. Super easy way to tell who's control of any area is, who do you pay your taxes to? Here we pay our taxes to the U.S. government because they're the bosses, and if we don't pay, they're going to throw us in jail. There, the Israelis collect the taxes and they dole it out to the Palestinian Authority. I've been there at times when they haven't doled anything out for 3-4 months. So the Palestinian employees, teachers, you know, the workers, the construction workers, all that stuff aren't getting paid because there's no money. So I think they're extremely limited in what authority they do have, and largely by the a lot of the population they're seeing is corrupt. That's kind of what they saw with the PLO, you know, and Arafat. So they don't. I think that's why they haven't had an election in 17 years or something, because they're trying to maintain that without the, I think, popular support of the people at this point. So they're kind of limited on both ends, I think. Does that answer everything? Okay.
But what I thought.
Oh, okay. Questions? Come up here. Thanks.
Other questions? Yes.
Thank you very much. So as you showed in your presentation, there was a drop in the Christian Palestinian population, and indicating that they have more resources to leave.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how the occupation has aggravated Christian and Muslim tensions among Palestinians. If you could speak on that.
Sure. Thank you for the question. One of the big reasons, first of all, they leave is they tend to have more connections in the West, and they're, you know, pretty well educated, so they have skills. And a lot of them, rather than grow up, or more likely see their kids grow up in this, they leave. So it's easier for them to leave. So you're seeing that as a reason. And actually, Bernard Sabella he worked with Bethlehem University and all that, the Middle East Council of Churches. He did the most massive study ever done on their emigration and why are they leaving. And it's really fascinating. And if you get a chance to come hear him, I would definitely do that because he knows all the ins and outs. That's the big reason why they're leaving. As far as Christian-Muslim relations, it's actually tightened them because as an oppressed people, you join together, right? When you have a common enemy or whatever. So it's made it tight. Plus, you know, at least from the perspective of the Catholic schools, which we have, I mean, the Latin Patriarch has 44 schools, I think. Bethlehem University is the Vatican's university there in Bethlehem. It's mostly Muslim students they have. So the Christians and Muslims grow up together. They're in the same sports sports teams. They're interested in dating the same girls or guys or whatever. And one of the biggest pressures on the Christian community, and especially in Gaza, because I was there one summer and I got to teach some English classes. Got to talk to the kids for me, but they're college students, right? That age. I asked them that. I said, so, you know, it's 99.9% Muslims here. How does that pressure you guys or what? And they're like, no. They said, it's not like people are trying to convert us. They're like, this isn't Syria or ISIS, right? They're like, the pressure comes from we're such a minority, and growing up, most of my friends are Muslim. The people I'm interested in dating are Muslim. Why am I Christian? You know, it makes them question their identity, and it's more that internal pressure than, you know, anything external they're getting, at least in what they shared. So, good. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. What you are telling us is very troublesome. And I have spent 2 weeks in Jerusalem in June, and I could see so many things, and the wall to Bethlehem, etc.
Yeah.
My question is about what do you think about two-nation state solution? I know that in foreign affairs there are a number of political scientists who say this is an illusion. We should stop talking about two states. It's one state which has the power to do everything the state wants, and so also the Biden administration should take some measures to put more pressure on the Israelis to find a solution.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough question. A long time in the international community, the two states been like the go-to, and the Vatican has always said they hold to two states living side by side in safety and security, with Jerusalem under international protection because it's so important to so many people. That's their stance. It's still their stance today. The practicality of how a two-state solution, you kind of saw the maps with the Swiss cheese, how everything is, and the reservations everybody's on. I just think practically we have to join all that together, and I don't see how that can happen. So I know I don't have an answer for that, but I just don't think practicality they can do that anymore. So I would think then that leaves one state, which being an American, I would hope everybody equal, everybody gets a vote, but that's not how it is right now. But I think that's
Right.
going to be the way that it goes. It's going to have to do something. Yeah.
Yeah, they call it the facts on the ground have changed. And the problem with the one person equal vote in one state would be the Jewish demographics would be upset with the Palestinians. So it would no longer be a Jewish state, and you'd have a different kind of conflict.
Yeah.
It's like civil war type. And so then that would have to be managed. I don't know what I'm saying, but it's
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because even
it's difficult.
in Northern Ireland, that was part of the Good Friday Agreement was, well, they can hold a referendum to be part of Ireland again at some point in the future. So the Catholics, and again, this isn't a religious conflict, but that's how they're identified, the indigenous. The Catholics are just waiting because they're outbreeding the Protestants. So they're already a majority. So they're just waiting for majority voting, and then they can vote it in. So it's kind of the same demographic kind of bomb there.
Yeah. I'm going to ask, I have lots of questions.
Oh.
So we have about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So one of the things you mentioned was, come and support the work, volunteer. And we would love to come, we'll love to send students also.
Yeah.
But here's something that comes to my mind as like an administrator.
Yeah.
The safety and well-being of the students. Like, how easy is it for them to travel, to move into Gaza or move across these checkpoints? And what are the things that we would have to be mindful of as we enter into such partnerships and encourage our students to go there? I think that's one of the inhibitors, is some of the logistics seem so daunting that we just don't even look there.
Yeah. Now, Gaza, you're not getting in. I mean, it's almost near impossible. As far as safety, they'd be fine once they get over there, because if there's anything going on that day, whoever you're with, your guides or whoever are going to get you away, to move you away from it, right? And there's no better thing than the person-to-person interaction, so that's ideal. But barring that, there's so much you can do online. One of the organizations I volunteer with is called We Are Not Numbers. It's run by a Jewish lady, Dr. Rothschild in California. And she has mentors like me, people with just writing skills, that will help the students in Gaza tell their story to a Western audience. So it's their own stories. We're just trying to, how do you put that in English, and how do you communicate with Americans? It's a great program, and you can do it online, and you can do it. There's plenty of need, so there's no, just sign up and they'll fit you in to do it. So there's a lot of opportunities, luckily with the internet, that they can pursue it even if they can't travel. By travel would be ideal, but yeah. And you're with an organization, you'll be fine.
Great.
Any final thoughts on this?
Well, I think we can then wrap it up. We're just so grateful that for all the work that you do, and for making the trip out here, and for partnering with us, and all of our co-sponsors who are present in the room to bring the Father Drew Christiansen lecture series here. And I hope you will be back here. I don't know if you are coming in November, but we'd love to have you here. And we'd love to have all of you back and invite your friends on November 16th. So with that, please join me in thanking our guest, Sir Jeffrey Edwards.
Thank you. Thank you. Now you can